Hey there, you guys. I'm sorry for the latency and the lack of videos for the last month. I've been kind of just busy with life and work and just kind of didn't feel like making any videos or anything like that. Just kind of lost track of time. So this is kind of my wrap up for January and February, even though February I really didn't read anything. Oops. But yes, this is kind of my January reading wrap up. Also, there's not going to be any edits, so if I mess up, sorry. But then I'm also going to be talking about things that I'm unhauling, and my TBR for March, and how many books I have left on my TBR, yada yada yada. So let's start off with the books that I read in January. So the first book that I read was Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. I'm not really going to be talking about what I like if like the synopsis or anything like that, but I loved this book. I started reading it and I kind of just flew through it. It was super, super good. I really, really loved this book. I got this way back for my 16th birthday. I had all my friends bring me like their favorite book as like their gift to me. And so one of my friends actually gave me like, I want to say 5 books, and this was one of them, and I fell in love with it. It was so good. I'm so glad I read it. I was trying to read something by Lauren Oliver because I know that I love her books because of Replica and Ringer. I do eventually want to read Delirium and the Delirium trilogy and series, but I read this and I loved it. So that was the first book that I read. Then the second book that I read in January was the manga version of Romeo and Juliet. I got this while I was in London a couple summers ago, and I really didn't like it. I liked the Macbeth one, but this one I've heard the story so much, this just didn't really, I ended up like skimming through most of it. I just didn't really, it wasn't really for me. I don't really think I'm a manga person, so I liked the Macbeth one because I've only really read the story once in school, and so, but yeah, this one I've heard the story so much, I knew the story so well, this one really just didn't do it for me, but I kind of more in London because it's like, okay, we went to a bunch of Shakespeare stuff, it was a theater trip, so I got this just because I'm like, okay, I know Romeo and Juliet, might as well get this book. So, then the third book that I finished in January was The Rest of My True Love Gave to Me, which is a bunch of short stories bound up into one book, which is edited by Stephanie Perkins. I ended up reading the last like half of this. I started it a few years ago, but so I finished this one, and the stories were good. I mean, there's a weird range of them. I just kind of gave it, I think I gave it overall like a 4 out of 5 stars. So overall, I liked most of them, but some of them just didn't really do it for me. And then the next book that I read, and again, loved, was How to Love by Katie Cotugno. This book was amazing. I think I read it in like a day and a half. Like, it really, I just kept turning pages. I think this is the book that I read over half of it at work one day on a Saturday. I took this to work and read like 95% of it almost at work until I had a project to work on, so which was good. But yeah, so I read through this really, really fast. I think I gave this either a 4 or 5 out of 5 stars. 4 or 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book, and again, I kind of had a weird range of reviews this month, or last month, is Perfect Lies by Kirsten White. I think just the span between me reading Mind Games and Perfect Lies was just too much. I didn't really remember it. I didn't have the desire to reread Mind Games. I kind of skimmed through this, kind of remember the story, kind of didn't. So I was kind of lost. I think just the span between the two books just got to be too much, but I don't have a desire to reread Mind Games, so I think that both this and Mind Games are going to end up being unhauled, even though I've read them both, that I'm just going to end up unhauling these and getting rid of these because even though underneath the dust jackets they're so beautiful, I just don't have a desire to reread these or reread Mind Games and then read this one and actually get everything, so I'm just kind of going with it. Next, let's go ahead and get to all the books that I'm unhauling. So basically, the numbers, math I ended up doing wrong. I, at the start of 2017, had 127 books on my TBR. Now I have 116. So in theory, that means that I'm getting rid of 11. Well, with the way that I'm doing my kind of like rewarding program, I guess I could call it, for every 2 books that I read, I can buy 1 book. So I actually have a book that I did end up buying, but it was kind of for another reason. It wasn't really necessarily for the fact that I bought it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to buy this book forever. Like, I got it because, and I'll explain when I get there. But anyway, so I am unhauling 7 books, and I read 5 books. So overall, that's 12, but I'm back up. I have a total right now of 116. So anyway, the first set of books that I'm technically unhauling, but I've just decided that I don't have a desire to reread them, so I'm taking them off of my TBR list, even though I read them a while ago, is the first 2 novels in the Gilded Joy series. I have all 5 of them, and I read these a couple of years ago at least, and I plan to read the rest of the 3. Those are still on my TBR. But I was going to like reread these because it's been so long, but I've decided that just because the number is too high and just I don't have a desire, I'm going to take these off of my TBR and put them elsewhere until I end up reading all of the rest of the books. And they're also signed because Jennifer Allison is actually a local author, so I went to her book signing and met her a couple years ago, and all of these books are signed by Jennifer Allison. So super, super cool. She was a super nice lady. But yeah, so I'm unhauling these 2. The next book that I'm unhauling is again kind of for the same reason. I just don't have a desire to reread them, so I'm not going to finish the trilogy. Is the Matched, Crossed, Reached trilogy. I just don't have a desire to reread Matched and Crossed. It's been forever since I read the first 2 books. I think I read those back at least 4 or 5 years ago in like middle school, freshman year. So I just don't have a desire to finish the series. I got this book years ago. I remember enjoying it, but I just don't have the desire to finish the series. So I'm going to go ahead and unhaul this whole series. Even though I heard great things and I like Ali Condi's writing, I just don't have the desire to finish this trilogy. I've kind of put it off for too long now. I don't really remember how Crossed ends. I'm just done. There's nothing really else I can say about that. The next book that I'm going to unhaul is Once Upon a Time, Red's Untold Tale. I'm still going to keep it, but I just don't, because it's a black painted edge, and so it's a super pretty book. I'm just not really into the whole fairy tale writing, at least as of right now. Like, I just can't read it, and I like the show, but since it's like a side story and the show's ending, I'm just kind of not really in a Once Upon a Time mood anymore. So I'm taking this off of my to-read list, and I'm just kind of going to keep it because it's a pretty book, but other than that, I don't think I'm ever going to read it. And kind of going along with that, I am going to also be unhauling The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, as well as The Girl Who Fell Beneath Fairyland and Led the Revels There. I started reading the first book, and I just didn't really like the writing. I didn't really like the way the story was being told. I got about a chapter or 2 in, I think, and I really wasn't doing it. Like, I didn't want to, and I'm at a point right now that I don't really want to waste my time on books that I've had for years and that I just kind of don't like. Like, I'm okay with DNFing books now, and so I'm just kind of like, I got these off of Book Outlet years ago because I wanted them and I really liked fairy tales, but I'm kind of just at a point where I'm kind of done. I don't really want to get through these anymore, so I'm going to unhaul those as well. And then I'm also, way back when I was buying crap tons of books through Book Outlet and everything like that, I ended up purchasing Through the Evernight by Veronica Rossi. At the time, I had thought I purchased the first book as well, but apparently I didn't. Like, it went out of stock right when I purchased it or something. And so I just have the second book in the trilogy, and I don't really have a desire anymore to read the first book. So having the second book is kind of pointless. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one because I don't need it. Okay, now on to next month. So I'm unhauling 7 and I read 5, which all in all, that's 12 books off of my shelves, which is amazing. Like, that is amazing. Getting that number down to under 100 is like one of my mini goals. That's so easy now. Like, I only have 16 books left to go, and I might end up unhauling some more. I don't know. So the first book that I plan to read in March is Life After Theft. Ooh, brief pause. I also read and listened to the audiobook of Ready Player One in February. That is the only book I finished in February, and it's not even technically part of my TBR pile because it's not a physical book that I own. So it doesn't really count, but it does count because I read it, and I want to read 50 books this year, no matter if they're off of my TBR or not. So I ended up reading that one. I don't have like something to show you, so I ended up reading that in February. So that is actually the only book that I finished in the month of February, which is kind of depressing, but oh well. So the first book that I plan on finishing is Life After Theft by April Lynn Pike. I've started this book. I want to say about a chapter and a half, 2 chapters in. I'm 2.5 chapter and a half in. And I'm really, really enjoying it. I think it's a funny story so far. And yeah, I don't really know. I knew the synopsis of this forever ago, but I don't really know 100% what the synopsis is anymore, which is nice going into a story not really knowing what it's about. But I'm really, really liking it so far, so I hope to just kind of sit down, power through this. I've been trying to read it at work, and so I don't really have like some free time, and sometimes I have a lot of free time. It kind of comes and goes. The next handful of books I have are classics. I want to read like a classic this month, so either that's going to be Little Women by Louise May Alcott. I know, again, this has been on my TBR for the entire year and for the last like couple months. Or I want to read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, or Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. I want to read one or all this month. I want to be able to kind of just sit down and read some classics for a day and kind of make sure that reading is kind of back into a focus of mine because I've kind of just been putting it off lately. I also want to read Story Girl by by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Wow. A couple weeks ago, I was sick in bed for 3 days, really couldn't move, anything like that, and I ended up catching up on a lot of things. One of them was the Anne of Green Gables TV series on Netflix, and I fell back in love with the story, and I want to be able to read Story Girl and finish something else by Ella Montgomery. So this is definitely high on my list. And then I also obviously want to finish Goblet of Fire. That has been on my list for months now. I also would like to finish Emily Winstap and the Land of the Midnight Sun. This is another book that I've had for probably a year or so at least now. I finished this series, like what I thought of the series, a while ago. And this might end up turning into something that I end up unhauling at some point, but for right now I want to try and read it because I remember really, really loving the series. But it's the 5th book in the series, and I think there's honestly one more. I don't know if I'll end up buying it or not. But yeah, so and it'll be a super quick read. It's middle grade, so, you know. And then comes down to the one book that I ended up purchasing this month. So by the books that I finished off of my TBR, I have one more book in like my bank or whatever you want to call it. Like I have one more book that I'm allowing myself to buy by the number of books that I finished. So this one that I purchased is Goodbye Christopher Robin, A.A. Milne, and the Making of Winnie the Pooh, which is the book that the movie Goodbye Christopher Robin was based off of. This is basically a story of A.A. Milne and how he wrote Winnie the Pooh and all that sort of stuff. And obviously you guys know that Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorite characters and books and stuff. So I wanted to get this book, and I also purchased alongside it the movie. I went and saw the movie in theaters when it was in theaters, and I loved it. It was such a good movie. And so I really want to be able to read the book that it was based off of and things like that. So, because it's basically like a biography of A.A. Milne and how he wrote the story. So, yeah, I really, really want to get to this at some point soon. But yeah, so this was kind of, you know, a book that I allowed myself to purchase, but it does technically count as one of my books. another book that I hope to read at some point soon, but technically since I didn't buy it, it's not part of my TBR. I'm weaseling my way around it. Is the autobiography, or the, yeah, I think it's the autobiography of P.T. Barnum. I am in love with The Greatest Showman. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. I am, obviously you guys know, I am a theater person, a musical theater person, and I am in love with that movie. I've seen it 4 times in theaters, and it's not technically out of theaters yet, so I might see it one more time before it's done. I don't know. I've already pre-ordered the DVD. Yes. So I want to be able to read that. I already have it. My mom bought it right after we saw the movie. She fell in love with him too. So I'm going to read that at some point soon as well. But because it's not on my TBR, I'm not really focusing on it necessarily. But yeah, so I started at the beginning of the year at 127. And now after my first wrap up, I am at 116 of not books that I have to read. So all in all, that's a good number. I feel better about that number than I did before. Obviously, I'm unhauling quite a few books, which is fine. I'm really starting to be okay with it. For a while there, I wasn't. I was like, I haven't read it, so I can't get rid of it. So, but now that, I'm kind of okay with it. If you want to keep track of how my numbers fluctuate as they fluctuate rather than waiting for a video, you guys can go ahead and follow me or friend me on Goodreads. And I'll basically accept anybody because it's Goodreads. But yeah, so I update my list on there a little bit more frequently than I will Twitter or YouTube, obviously. But yeah, I will hope to actually read some stuff in March and update a little bit more frequently. And yeah, so I mean, at the very least, you'll have a March reading wrap up probably. And I hope to participate in the readathon by Zoe. And if I do, I will end up vlogging it as well this month, or on Saturday, March 3rd. So if I end up doing it, I will end up vlogging it, so you'll see that video coming up in the next like a week or so. But yeah, other than that, I guess that's it for this video today, guys, and I will see you guys all in my next video. Goodbye!